Good morning, guys. Okay, I have a question for you all. What does iron loss or anemia, fibromyalgia, and magnesium dumping all have in common with one another? Well, the truth to this is looking into certain insults and pathways that can be compromised to use insults is often this could be associated with mold toxicity, in particular when it comes to iron loss. You see, what mold does, it actually pushes out a lot of citrate through the tricarbolic acid cycle, and this causes a massive dumping of iron into the body itself. Now, in addition to this, when we have high amounts of mold or we have high amounts of candida or other forms of yeast infection, we also find ourselves to be liberating higher quantities of oxalates. Now, oxalates bind to both copper and to iron, rendering them more free in their circulation, which causes a lot of damage to our bodies, particularly if they can't be utilized for the formation of red blood cells, as one example, or for the formation in processes such as dopamine beta hydroxylase, as what we utilize copper for in the use of ceruloplasm, or even with collagen formation for that matter. So when we're looking into these pathologies, these symptoms, when people are having chronic pain, or if they're having consistent bouts of anemia that's not necessarily always responsive, or is momentarily responsive to iron treatment, but then there's a constant reoccurring relapse. And in addition to this, if people are having gastrointestinal complaints or severe histamine reactions, continual sinusitis, fibromyalgia, type symptoms, or even rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory disorders, we're really looking to look at not just the pathology itself, but underlying mechanisms that could be contributing toward these pathologies. And one of the biggest things here are oxalates and mold. And they're quite common, more common than most people think, and they're quite elusive into being able to determine them, particularly mold, into a normal test. Running organic acids gives you a good idea. However, doing a mycotox test will give you a far more accurate depiction of what mold it is that you're actually dealing with. And if you are dealing with any of these symptoms, or you have patients, if your practitioners listening in on this are dealing with these symptoms, it's very, very important to not just run an organic acids, but also to do a mycotox test. So start with organic acids first. If it still comes back as a negative, run the mycotox test just to make sure that it is a negative mold issue that you're not dealing with. And if it is, clear out the source, make sure to deal with the fungal overgrowth that's associated with mold. Make sure to give the minerals that is depleted by mold or oxalates, which are associated with mold, increase as well. And those are namely calcium. Calcium is massively depleted through mold. Magnesium dumping is huge when it comes to oxalate high amounts of what they call hyperoxaluria. And this is really found, so it's quite common actually, especially with oxalates. Not necessarily, I haven't always necessarily seen a lot of people with mold. There are quite a few though, but not as common as people with high amounts of oxalates. Excuse me. But however, people with high amount of oxalates, what you can see in a blood chemistry exam, most notably, is poor levels of magnesium, red blood cell magnesium, no matter how much magnesium supplementation they are taking. In addition to that, high serum copper levels but low ceruloplasm levels are often quite also highly associated with that too. And also to that further point, a loss of iron can actually happen, and low glutathione levels also are quite common with high amounts of oxalates, due to the fact that oxalates steal a lot of the glycine required for glutathione production. So in the end of the day, guys, when you are looking to resolve these underlying issues of pain that people are going through, or energy loss that they're going through, you need to look into what are the culprits behind instigating all of this. And this is where, testing is so fundamentally important, and not just surface level testing of just bloods. Bloods will give an indication of where the mineral deficiency might be coming from, or the blood systems, the bodily systems that may be impacted by that. But they don't always necessarily give you an indication of what is actually going on in terms of the culprit, like either maybe being candida, clostridia, mold, parasites, CBV, EBV, and CMV. A whole host of insults that could be going on in the body itself that bloods don't always necessarily either detect completely, or they don't give you a full picture, but they are a great point to start with to give you indication of how the body's functioning based upon points of loss. But yeah, if you're struggling with histamine, or know people are struggling with histamine responses, concurrent histamine responses, or those who are struggling with anemia, particularly iron loss or iron insufficiency anemia, and have those two running with one another, major histamine issues and a lot of iron loss and causing anemia, then please have them look into possibly oxalate overload, as well as species that could be contributing to that overload apart from just diet intake, such as candida or mold. From me, Justin McGuire, hope this was informative. Stay optimized.